Welcome back to the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. Our guest today is Eric Brakey from the free state of New Hampshire. You can join thousands of libertarian and liberty-minded individuals who are making New Hampshire their home to preserve liberty in one state. Eric, how's it going, man?
It's going well. Thank you so much for having me on. You've really been doing this for 11 years?
So it started out as a blog, but the podcast, we're up around 250 episodes. So it's been 2.5 odd years on the podcast.
Wow. All right. It's awesome to see kind of a project continuing on for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, maybe that's a good kickoff point is I would love to know about the history of the Free State Project specifically in New Hampshire. Most people know, live free or die, and New Hampshire's always kind of had that bend to it. But how did this project specifically come about? How long has it been going on?
Yeah, in the early 2000s, there was a recognition by some in the libertarian movement that the Libertarian Party had been a thing for decades. There'd been various kind of libertarian efforts kind of inside and outside the Libertarian Party and the Republican Party, all this and all that. And yet there were very few tangible, measurable gains for libertarianism that have really been made in all that time. And the thought was, there are millions of libertarians in this country, but we are scattered. We're kind of like a diaspora. We are not concentrated in any one place. Mm-hmm. So anywhere we might be on the upper limits, 5% of the population in an area. People who believe in the original vision of a government that protects life, liberty, and property, and doesn't do a whole lot else. But that's not enough. 5% is not enough to have a real impact on the politics of the culture wherever you are. So our founder, Jason Sorens, wrote a paper theorizing what if libertarians picked one place to concentrate in, to move to and settle in, and by being a concentrated force with concentrated numbers, begin to have a disproportionate impact on the politics and the culture of where we land. There was a whole process for selecting kind of what the state was going to be. The early participants in the Free State Project got to propose the states and ultimately vote on where that was going to be. There were a number of states considered. Some finalists included states like Wyoming and Maine and others, but ultimately New Hampshire was chosen for a number of reasons. One, it, as you've noted, it already has a strong libertarian streak. It already did. It has for a long time. We're going on the 80-year anniversary now of when "Live Free or Die" was selected as the state motto, and of course, even before that, New Hampshire has a long kind of history going back to the American Revolution, and before that of fighting for these kind of original ideals of liberty. So New Hampshire was selected, one, because it had that strong base of already kind of a pre-existing libertarian culture and politics, but also because as a small population state, 20,000 people moving and settling in New Hampshire would have a much bigger impact on New Hampshire than it would.
What is the population of New Hampshire?
About 1.3 million.
Okay.
I'm sure you go to some states, there are cities with bigger populations than that.
And in New Hampshire, is there a specific city or town where the movement is concentrated? Where it's like, hey, I'm coming to New Hampshire. Where should I live? Like, where? What do you tell people?
There are certainly kind of different pockets in different regions. I would say that you pretty much any region you go to, you're going to find Free State communities. We're pretty well established now, over 2 decades into the project. But Manchester tends to be a first stop for a lot of people. It's our biggest city, and there's a strong kind of libertarian Free State community there. We have a libertarian clubhouse called the Quill, which was the first Liberty clubhouse in the state, and there are now many more in different regions. But that's a great first stop for people who are kind of looking for something with kind of more, more urban access, having access to an airport and things like that. But you go further north into the North Country of New Hampshire, you'll find a lot more, I would say, folks who are more kind of conservatarian bent, maybe a little more religious, a little more family oriented,
Mm-hmm.
people who are looking for a more rural lifestyle in the mountains, doing agorism or homesteading. And then wherever you go, there's different pockets and different regions. I could go through a lot of them, but there are many different. Uh, if for those who are involved in kind of the libertarian community, we all know there are many different kind of shades of libertarianism and different spins on it. The great thing
Mm-hmm.
about New Hampshire is we have all of that here. We have all of these different flavors of libertarian community, and each free state community in the different regions has its own flavor to it.
Okay, cool. I thought I mentioned early in the episode, one previous podcast guest is Joel Valenzuela, who you probably know.
Oh
He
yeah.
used to live up there, right?
Oh yeah, he does. He's actually like the next town over from me here in the New Hampshire seacoast.
So he was on, I want to say before episode 100, a while back. So he's been on, and he was the first person that came on the podcast to talk about the Free State Project. So people can also go check out that episode as well. Joel famously kind of like lives on crypto, and he was like one of the first people to do it before it was easy.
Yeah.
Shout out to Bit Refill as well, one of the sponsors of the podcast. They help you live on crypto. Um, in my personal interest, Eric, by the way, is because half my family is from Massachusetts and half my family is from Ontario, Canada. And so New Hampshire is like snugly in the middle and low tax. So it would kind of like work out pretty well for me if I was ever to like move back to North America. I'm more Latin America now, right? I'm in Mexico and stuff. But if I was ever to move back, like this is like my personal interest here. I'm like, maybe this could work for me.
Maybe you need a summer home up here.
Yeah, yeah. On what's it called? Lake Winnipesaukee? How do you
Yeah,
say
yeah, that's a popular spot.
it?
I will be honest. I am still getting to know New Hampshire myself because I just spent 10 years in Maine politics, and I
Mhm.
just made the move over the span of the course of this last year from Maine to New Hampshire, and
Mhm.
um, I am learning so much about New Hampshire as we continue to recruit more people to make the move. But there's a rich history here, and it's a beautiful, beautiful part of the country. If you've never been to New Hampshire or New England in the autumn, um, it's boy, with the leaves changing, it's a sight to behold. It's like nothing you'll ever see anywhere else on planet Earth. And New Hampshire is the only place where you can experience that New England autumn without having to expose yourself to communism. So it's a great combination there.
I like it. I like it. One of my goals is to do Mount Washington. I'm not sure if you've done that yet.
Oh, I have not, but everyone who does tends to brag about it, and they have those bumper stickers on their
Yeah,
cars,
yeah,
letting
yeah.
you know.
My car climbed Mount Washington.
Yeah, which is a feat actually. Not every car can do it. So
Maybe you could, Eric, give us a little bit of background on yourself as well. So I was watching some videos about you. You've run for office a couple times and done some cool stuff. Could you give us a little background?
yeah, I'll give you the very quick synopsis, and if there's anything you want to explore more, feel free to ask questions. But um, I've been in politics now for, I guess, going back to 2011. So what does that make it? 14 years. I got started as the state director in Maine for the Ron Paul presidential campaign
Nice.
for the 2012 campaign. I was one of the main Ron Paul delegates that was kicked out of that convention at the RNC that year, for folks who followed that story all the way back. Um, 2 years after that, I ran for the state Senate in Maine. I was elected. I defeated a 36-year Democrat incumbent, and I was the youngest state senator in America at the age of 26. I spent
Nice.
two terms there, passed constitutional carry, reformed welfare, passed right to try, did a big expansion around market principles of our medical cannabis program. Then I left. I ran for the United States Senate. I was the Republican nominee against U.S. Senator Angus King in 2018. That's how I ended up in the Twitter files, which you can ask me about if you want to know more. Did not win that race. Ran for the U.S. Congress 2 years later. Did not win that race. The GOP establishment came against me very hard in the primary that year. I went to work for Young Americans for Liberty down in Texas for a bit, helping to build kind of the Liberty Legislator Coalition in state capitals around the country, and then came back home to Maine. I won back my state Senate seat from a Democrat who had held it since I had given up the seat. Spent another 2 years there, but I realized as it was kind of coming to the end of that term that I was ready to pass the torch on to other people. There were a lot of great new Liberty leaders coming up in Maine. And I kind of felt like this doesn't need to be me anymore. There are other things, other challenges I'm ready to take on. And I'd seen this entire time as I'd been doing politics in Maine, I'd seen the rapid development of liberty in New Hampshire in a way that we were not seeing victories like this in any other state. And when the opportunity was open, they were looking for a new executive director of the Free State Project. I was ready for a new challenge, and I was always been very excited about what they were doing in New Hampshire. I decided to offer to serve, and I've been in the role now for just over a year.
And what role exactly is that, sorry?
So I'm the executive director.
Executive director of the Free State?
Yes, of the Free State Project. So that means on the day-to-day basis, I'm running things here.
Okay, so you're kind of a political prodigy.
Your words, not mine.
And then I do want to come back to some of your some of the like how that works, like running for state senate and all that. And then now, could you tell me just like what is the Free State Project? Like, what are the maybe like the core pillars of the philosophy or the benefits?
Yeah, well, what I would say, I mean, our philosophy, I think, is in terms of our political philosophy, it's the same libertarian philosophy you will generally hear from. I mean, I guess there's a million variations. Anyway, we're a big tent liberty movement. We want to welcome libertarians of all stripes. People who believe in the idea of non-aggression, that we should live our lives not hurting people and not taking their stuff, and that those are the minimum rules for being a civilized person engaged in society with others. And we shouldn't use government to hurt people or take their stuff either. So we have that philosophy, except that we vary from libertarians in one specific way, is that we recognize that all the other libertarian strategies that have been tried are failing for the most part, and it is the concentration strategy that is the demonstrably most effective strategy that libertarians can take to achieve liberty in our lifetime, rather than trying to, rather than accepting that we have to be a very small ideological minority wherever we are, beating our head against the brick walls of statism to no effect. We can pursue a different strategy, bring people together, concentrate in one place, and achieve the numbers that we need to actually build the kind of free society we would like to live in. And so this project has been going for 2 decades now. That's a full generation. The results, I think, are very clear. Some of those results are very easy to see if you care about politics. I mean, the fact of the matter is, on the state level in New Hampshire, Republicans run the House, the Senate, and the governorship. And within the Republican caucus, the Liberty faction is stronger in New Hampshire than I think probably any other state than you'll find in the country. Libertarians, as Republicans, control almost a quarter of the House and the Senate. Within the Republican caucus, they are the biggest single ideological faction, which is why in recent years, New Hampshire has been passing school choice legislation, has been pioneering, leading on gun rights with constitutional carry. Even the New Hampshire House of Representatives became the very first lower chamber in the country to pass Defend the Guard legislation, seeking to call our National Guard troops home from wars that haven't been declared by Congress. So these are kind of great examples of kind of the fruits of this effort. But even beyond just the policy victories, what's really, I think, one of the best things about New Hampshire and what the Free State movement is producing, and this is something I don't think you can really understand until you kind of come and visit and experience it for yourself, but is the value of having actual in-person, strong libertarian community. Libertarian community in this country is basically just like it exists online, because we aren't in a single place together to build community in a physical space on a consistent basis. But in New Hampshire, there are Free State events taking place in New Hampshire virtually every single day. And it's not just people sitting around talking about Murray Rothbard. It's cryptocurrency meetups. It's rucking groups. It's knitting groups. It's, whatever your individual interest is. There are libertarian groups kind of getting together in New Hampshire and doing it. And if they aren't doing that yet, if for anyone who wants to come out here, you could certainly build a group. If you want, whatever your niche, your hobby is, you could do it with people who aren't going to turn around and snitch on you to the government if next COVID regime pops up and you decide not to wear a mask or step outside for a little fresh air.
Sure. Okay. And is the Libertarian Party sort of like a subset of the Republican Party? Are there Libertarian Democrats that are part of Free State, or is it all kind of like under the Republican umbrella?
So different people pursue the strategies that they think are going to work. We don't have a central plan here, but I think what time has shown is that the most effective strategy for affecting politics in New Hampshire is for libertarians to run as Republicans. There have been libertarians who have Free Staters who've run as Democrats and gotten elected, but the Democrats are a lot more hostile to Free Staters, and they tend to find them and root them out, and they don't last there for longer than a term. They either get co-opted and join the Borg of the Democrats, or they get drummed out. But within the Republican Party, we have so effectively co-opted much of the infrastructure of the Republican Party in the state. Like the Republican majority leader in New Hampshire, in the New Hampshire House of Representatives, who's the guy who's driving a lot of the policy agenda in the legislature. I mean, he's a Free Stater who moved as a part of the Free State Project just a number of maybe just a decade ago. I don't remember the exact year, but a lot of, I mean, we have so many Free Staters in the legislature who have gone on to be elected by their own local communities as respected leaders. It's not just Free Staters electing Free Staters; it's Free Staters earning the respect of the local communities that they settle in and being, entrusted to positions of leadership.
Gotcha. And I guess like to get anything done in like U.S. politics, you have to align with the Democrats or the Republicans. Like you can't, if you run as an independent, you never really get elected. You really never get anything done. Is that kind of right? So you kind of have to choose one of the two main parties?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I tend to argue, is that it is, and I find myself arguing this oftentimes with a lot of libertarians who are committed like LP partisans, which I have a lot of friends in the Libertarian Party. I respect them, doing what they think is right. But, and there are ways to use a third party system like the LP to, there are tactical things you can do. I think Angela McArdle has been very innovative as the head of the Libertarian Party for getting some tangible gains there.
Okay,
but
so there's a Libertarian Party and there's the Free State Project, and they're separate but related.
Well, so I think the way to understand it is the Free State Project is that we are just kind of like the recruiting arm of the liberty movement in New Hampshire. But by recruiting, we're going out into the world. We're identifying members of the libertarian diaspora and making the case to them why they should relocate and come and move and join us in New Hampshire. We try to, let's start easy. Come out and visit. Come out and experience the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Come out and experience the New Hampshire Liberty Forum, or come out any time of year for a 1-week porcupine vacation and experience all the daily events that are going on out here. So that's our
sounds
job.
Like we're both in the relocation business then.
I guess so.
I'm trying to get people to relocate to Latin America. You're trying to get them to relocate to New Hampshire.
I guess we're at cross purposes. I'm surprised you invited me on this show. We're competing
for the same libertarian talent.
I guess so. But here you are, even yourself, thinking about maybe you need a summer home up in New Hampshire. So maybe maybe there's a way it can work out for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I got to play hockey somehow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Um, is it a tough sell to get people to move from warmer parts of the U.S. and say, come and experience snow?
Certainly that has been kind of one of the things we run into a lot is people saying, "No, I can't deal with the winters." I find it a little ironic as Florida is under snow right now. Um, and a lot of the southern states had a bunch of snow dumped on them that they don't have the infrastructure to deal with. Meanwhile, we get a little snow right here and the plows are out and we're shovel our driveways. We throw on a jacket. We're prepared. We handle it. I always think, in up here in New England, we don't really deal with hurricanes. We don't really deal with earthquakes. We don't really deal with forest fires or tornadoes or all the other ways that Mother Nature is trying to kill you. Like we do get some snow. And I think as human beings, we've learned how to conquer snow. And in fact, the snow actually means that we are kind of like the Saudi Arabia of groundwater. So when the water wars come, like we've seen in places like California, New Hampshire is going to be the place to be. But certainly the cold weather in the winter is one thing that scares some people away. I don't think it's that bad. Maybe I just grew up with it, so maybe I'm a little desensitized. But but certainly we do have people who move from all over. We've had many people who come from California and warmer climates, but it has been especially it's been. We get a lot of people from around New England, right? People who love liberty, but they have given up on the idea that liberty is ever going to thrive in Massachusetts or in Vermont or in other states that are kind of near New England, like the Empire State, the number 50 state for freedom, the worst state for freedom in America is New York.
Is it?
Oh, yeah. If you look at the Freedom in the 50 State Index, New Hampshire is ranked number 1, and New York is number 50. It's even worse than California.
What are the metrics there? Is it taxes? Is it other things?
I think it's like something like 28 different policy areas that they kind of evaluate. This has been kind of a rolling index that's gone on for a number of years. But the states are scored on the basis of both economic and personal liberty. So some states, I was just looking at it today, actually, like a state like Texas, for example, ranks very high on economic freedom, but very low on personal freedom.
Really?
And
in what way? Because you can have you can have guns, but I guess it's other things like what, like school choice or abortion, or like what are some of the other?
Abortion isn't really part of the index, but gun rights definitely are. Certain privacy rights, civil asset forfeiture, a lot of kind of maybe accountability laws around police and different things. I'd have to pull up the index for you, which I'm happy to do so if you'd like.
I would want to know. Yeah, I would want to know.
All right,
and I guess as you're pulling that up, tell me about the Porcupine Festival. What's that about?
Pork Fest, it is affectionately known as. It has been. We are going into our 22nd year of Pork Fest. This is a week-long camping festival. They call it, like some people call it, the Libertarian Burning Man. It takes place in Lancaster, New Hampshire, every June, under the beautiful White Mountains for a full week. Some people come out and camp at the campground, or they bring their RV, or they stay in a motel, or they stay in a nearby hotel or Airbnb. People find different ways to stay when they're up here. But it is, we like to say, it's an opportunity to experience what a pop-up free society is like for an entire week. And there is, in addition to like great talks that are happening, we have great speakers every single year. We've had in recent years some big highlights. 2 years back, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Vivek Ramaswamy, when they were both campaigning for president, came on out. It's become a
Pork Fest.
Yeah, it's a Pork Fest. Yeah.
Okay. Did they camp overnight?
I think they probably stayed in some of the hotels nearby.
Yeah.
I like to camp out at the campgrounds, but not everyone's up for that. I think that's the full authentic experience, but if that scares you, don't let that stop you from coming out. Um, uh, but I remember it was 10 years ago when Lynn Ulbricht came out to PorcFest right after her son had been incarcerated and sentenced to a double life sentence plus 40 years. Ross Ulbricht for building a website. And back then, it seemed like a real hopeless cause for Ross Ulbricht to get his to ever win his freedom back. But Lynn Ulbricht came out to PorcFest. She found early support among the cryptocurrency loving libertarians of New Hampshire. And the Free State movement played a big role in boosting the signal and using influence of individual participants to help kind of get the Free Ross movement to where it is today. Obviously, Lynn did more than anyone. I don't want to take any credit away from her, but the Free State movement and PorcFest played a big role in that. And
for the audience, Ross just got freed yesterday, right?
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah.
I mean, it was yesterday, today, the day before, whatever. Because this will probably come out in 2-3 weeks ish. We're recording this on the 23rd. So, but that's huge, right? And I saw in Trump's tweet or his truth or whatever that he said, he didn't he shout out the Libertarian Party, and he said like the Libertarians were telling me they wanted to see this happen, so we made it happen.
Yeah. I think he shouted out the Libertarian movement, which was, for those of us in it, it's always though he spelled the Libertarian movement capital L, which we usually associate with the party. Anyway, whatever, it doesn't matter. But yeah, no, I think that I personally look at this, and some disagree. I recognize she can be a controversial figure, but I think that what Angela McArdle did with the Libertarian Party, using the Libertarian voting bloc as leverage to extract concessions from presidential candidates like Donald Trump, to get measurable, tangible policy goals of ours accomplished, with freeing Ross Ulbricht. I think that's a really great model for how we should be looking at politics. Not just as this like exercise for every election we gotta just vote for whoever is like the perfect avatar of our ideology, regardless of whether or not they have any tangible path to create any change, but understanding how we can use our leverage in politics and our voting bloc to make it politically expedient for the wrong people to do the right thing. Because the idea that we're going to get a majority of people elected, certainly on the federal government, maybe in New Hampshire, we can get a majority of libertarians who in their heart of hearts believe in liberty elected. Maybe that's achievable, but certainly on the federal level, it's you gotta know how to use leverage against the wrong people to get them to do the right thing. And in this case, the Libertarian voting bloc was the king-making voting bloc, and Angela, I think, knew how to use that well to make progress on a real issue. That's just my opinion, though. That's not the opinion of the Free State Project. I'm sure there will be some Free Staters who disagree.
I just need to pause the recording for 1 sec. Okay, should be good. So I was curious. We got Ross free. Hopefully he's on Joe Rogan sometime soon. What are some of the other like low-hanging fruit or highest leverage policies that you guys are advocating for right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, I will say, as far as like the federal government, it's always nice when you get something positive out of the federal government, but that's not really what we count on. I think that Washington, D.C. itself is mostly a lost cause. Speaking as someone who's run for federal office twice.
I saw your YouTube video. It was pretty harsh.
Well,
you're like, yeah, this like cesspool swamp, like I forget how you said it, but I was like, damn, like
was this at the Rage Against the War Machine rally? Yeah. All you federal politicians, you all can go to hell. I will go to New Hampshire. Tried to channel some Davy Crockett there. But yeah, I believe very much that the most effective thing that libertarians can do to challenge the power of the federal government and all the unconstitutional things they do is not to try to invade the belly of the beast. Not to spend all of our time and resources and energy trying to get congressmen and U.S. senators elected. If there's an opportunity that comes along, great. That's wonderful. But ultimately, the most effective thing we can do is get people elected into the state legislatures of this country. And New Hampshire, of course, with the concentration strategy, is really leading the way on that, with nearly 100 Liberty legislators elected. But the power of the state legislatures is not just that you can change state policies to make us kind of more free in relation to what our state government does, but the construction of our Constitution means that you can use states to nullify unconstitutional policies from the federal level that they depend upon the states to be in compliance to enforce. I think one of the great demonstration cases of this was the way that states individually over time nullified cannabis prohibition across the country. First it was California, then Maine, then dominoes kind of falling around the country. And eventually it just became impossible for the federal government to really enforce their prohibitionist policy without states supporting them. And so it's even though that federal law is on the books in most states, there's still some annoying things like access to banking and stuff, but it's been effectively nullified. And that is a strategy that we can do on many issues. Many states, including New Hampshire, are leading on this when it comes to Second Amendment rights, with things like the Second Amendment Preservation Act. Which,
so ground up, start with the state legislature, state senate. What are some of the ones you actually want to see, though? Like what do you actually want to see next in terms of changes?
I want to see defend the guard. That's my
so bring the troops home. Everybody wants to bring the troops home. That should be kind of a no-brainer. What
Everyone
else?
except for the people in DC. So that's a big effort right now. New Hampshire is really kind of leading the charge on education freedom accounts, which is a school like.
Does that mean what's it called, school choice?
Yeah, this is kind of this policy has come to be regarded as like the gold standard of school choice, where you take dollars that would otherwise flow to government schools, and you say these dollars don't belong to the bureaucracies, they belong to the students, and the parents are in the best position to understand the needs of those students. And so you give parents the freedom to opt out of the government school, to take those taxpayer dollars with them into an account that they can direct towards the educational needs of their student. So that means that those dollars can be used to send them to a different public school that's nearby that is a better fit, or for private school tuition, or for homeschooling expenses.
That makes sense. I always thought it was weird how, like, if you go to private school, you're also paying for the public school and you don't really get a credit. So it's like you're paying twice.
Yeah,
exactly. It's kind of weird. And is homeschooling legal in New Hampshire?
Oh yeah, New Hampshire has great protections for homeschoolers. The homeschooling community in New Hampshire is very robust. There are very minimal. I think if you were to compare it to any other state, I would think you would find that New Hampshire has among the most minimal requirements for homeschooling.
That's cool.
And for submitting yourself to the state for approval.
Okay, cool. Are you able to pull up that list of some of the metrics for like what makes New Hampshire number one? Yeah. I'm genuinely curious.
All right, I've got it right here. All right, I'm going to click on New Hampshire. And if anyone wants to follow along, you can go to freedomin the50states.org, and that's 50. And this is produced by AIER, the American. Anyway, AIER.
Okay, I'm opening it on my phone as we go. So economic freedom and then personal freedom. Which one am I more interested in? Um, okay. Well, so maybe do you want to just read out like some of the high level categories just to give people an idea? Maybe we'll start with the economic one.
Yeah,
Money's power at the end of the day. So, do you want to kind of like read out some of these economic freedom things?
sure. I will also note that on economic freedom itself, there was another index that just ranked New Hampshire number one for economic freedom in particular
So it's number one for
in
freedom
all
for
of North
economic
America.
and number one for personal.
Let's see. If we were just looking at personal freedom, just personal freedom alone, New Hampshire ranks number 4. But economic freedom, New Hampshire ranks number 1 on the
Wow.
index. And yeah, where would you like to start?
Take it away.
All right. Um, well, as far as state taxation goes, we rank number 2. We have New Hampshire has no income tax and no sales tax. We do have property taxes, but overall, our tax burden is about as low as you will find anywhere in the country.
Hey, could we actually pause on property taxes? Sorry
Yeah,
to cut you off before you get started, but I did want to bring this up in this episode. I remember at one point I was kind of like looking at Zillow and looking at property tax in New Hampshire, and I noticed that the property taxes varied so drastically
yeah,
depending on the county in New Hampshire, where some of the counties in New Hampshire are like Texas levels, like 2% a year or higher. And then some of them are like whatever 0.5% a year or like extremely low counties. And even some of these counties and so I think I would have to guess is like the variability is insane. So it's almost hard to paint the state with the brush of saying high property taxes.
yeah. You do have a lot of discretion in what property taxes you pay based on where you choose to live in the state. Uh, Property taxes are set by your local municipality, and a lot of it goes to the government schools and some of the more liberal cities and towns in New Hampshire, because they do exist. You will find that you're paying higher property taxes. I'm in Dover, New Hampshire. This is where I landed.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'm sure I'm on the higher end of the property tax spectrum. It's a pretty liberal city that I landed in, but I had to be on the main border so my wife could commute to work in Portland. So this is where I ended up.
Hmm.
Altogether, it's a very nice place to
Yeah,
live.
I think it was up in like Conway type area was like the lowest in New Hampshire.
Mm,
And it's like literally like 20% of the taxes in other. It's like a huge difference. I don't know.
yeah, yeah. And frankly, as someone who advocates for decentralization in decision making, I mean, this is decentralized decision making. People
Yeah.
in their localities get the kind of local government they want to have. If they want to have big government that's spending a lot on government schools and all kinds of local services, you can have that. You're going to pay for it in your property taxes. But if you don't want those property taxes, there are a lot of other places you can live in New Hampshire where you can enjoy low property taxes and no income tax and no sales tax. But you might be a little bit further away from some of the more heavily populated areas. So it's a
Hmm.
trade off.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Keep going on the metrics on economic freedom and so forth.
Okay. So state taxation, we were number 2. Um, on government consumption, which is spending on operations such as wages and salaries and goods and services for the state's own use. We are also number 2. New Hampshire is known for having very high return on investment per tax dollar spent. Um, Local taxation, yeah, and this is where kind of we we take a little bit of a hit. We're at number 33, so we're kind of in the middle of the pack when it comes to local taxation.
Hmm.
But that's balanced out by having very low state level taxation. Uh, Government employment, we're number 6, so we um, don't have a huge government workforce. Um, Government debt, we are number 7. Cash and security assets, I guess we're number 46 there. Not
What
sure
does that
exactly.
mean, cash and security
See,
assets?
this category includes state and local financial assets. I am not totally certain. I didn't create the index, so our founder Jason Sorens is somewhat involved with that. He would be able to explain it more. Um, those
Okay.
were the fiscal freedoms. On regulatory freedom, um, land use were number 39. This includes eminent domain and land use regulation. So I imagine there's a lot of we have a lot of local restrictive zoning.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that um, we've been working to overcome, kind of so people can do more with the property that they own. That of course varies a lot from town to town.
Right.
Um,
Putting a shed on your property or whatever.
yeah.
Okay.
Um, health insurance freedom. We are number 19. So this includes variables for state level mandates and other health insurance regulations. Labor market freedom. This includes right to work laws, disability insurance requirements, and workers' compensation. We're right at the middle of the pack. We're number 25. Though it looks like this year in the legislature, New Hampshire is poised to pass a right to work law, which would make it the first right to work state in New England. So I imagine if that happens, we'll see a big jump on the index there. Lawsuit freedom includes, we're number 1. That includes how plaintiff friendly each state's civil liability system is. I don't really know much to explain that. Occupational freedom. This is occupational licensing, education, and experience requirements. We're number 7. New Hampshire recently passed reciprocity for occupational licenses. So if you have a license to be a master electrician in another state and you decide to
Mm-hmm.
move to New Hampshire, laws are changing so that
Transferability.
your license will transfer and you won't have to jump through all the hoops to get relicensed again.
Mm-hmm.
On miscellaneous regulatory freedom, which includes variables for regulations governing hospitals, auto insurance, homeowners insurance. I imagine this includes things like certificate of need laws, for hospitals, in which hospitals need to get permission from the state and their competitors in order to expand their services. A lot of states have that. New Hampshire repealed that in the last decade. So we're number 6 there. Cable and telecom freedom, we're number 20. So anyway, however, all of those things kind of mesh together, you compared to other states, we're ranked number 1 on economic freedom overall. So there's always kind of different areas where there's room for improvement, but when you take it all together as overall package,
Mm-hmm.
we're ranked number 1 consistently, and not just by this index, but also the Fraser Institute recently released a report listing New Hampshire as the number 1 for economic freedom in all of North America. So not even just counting the U.S.
Okay, cool. Well, I think we'll be here forever if we kind of like keep rolling through the whole thing. But this is cool. I didn't know this existed and how they kind of like stack up all the states. So this is great. It's and what's cool is like New Hampshire really is that anomaly in the Northeast, right?
It is, yeah, it is. I think to some degree because of it's just that revolutionary spirit that's been here since the beginning, and I
Mm-hmm.
think as some of the other states in New England have turned progressive, there's been a brain drain to New Hampshire, partly spurred on by the Free State Project, recruiting some of the best libertarians from around everywhere to come to New Hampshire, but also just I just know so many people in Maine, for example, when suddenly they're eliminating exemptions, philosophical and religious exemptions for vaccinations for kids in school, and even if you're homeschooled or you're doing online virtual, I'm sorry, if you're doing online virtual schools, you have to take all the mandatory vaccinations. I know a lot of people who leave. Who left Maine, who went to other states like New Hampshire or Texas or other places because these policies spur them away, and they're looking for places with more freedom. So, in some respects, the worse things get for the other states in New England, it does have I guess, a silver lining for New Hampshire because it leads us to get some of the best people.
Mm-hmm. This is cool. And do you have an idea of how many people have moved to New Hampshire in total over the years?
Yeah. Well, about so over 20,000 people have made the pledge that they would move. Now, not everyone has followed through on that pledge, and some are taking their time on doing that. But our estimates range from based on both our actual numbers and estimates of people who've moved in but don't necessarily tell us about it. Range that somewhere between 7 to 10,000 have made the move over the last 20 years. And I think actually, the initial idea was that we needed to get to 20,000 to have a big impact. And we still are, we want more people and we're still working to bring in more people. But I think what was underestimated at the time was that certain individuals are just like force multipliers, right?
Hmm.
It turns out even with maybe half those numbers, we've already kind of taken over a lot of politics in the state. Because if you recruit someone who comes here to be an activist and to run for the legislature and win the support of their community, and um, they have a big impact, and we've certainly seen that in the legislature.
So, how do you finance the Free State movement? I imagine you solicit donations. Maybe you take some of the profits from the festivals and events you run, or how do you guys actually finance the organization?
Yeah, so the Free State Project is it's partially funded by the success of our events, Pork Fest and Liberty Forum, but we also take donations, and we have our Porcupine Patron Program, which is currently ongoing, where anyone who donates $100 a year or $10 a month can be a Porcupine patron. You get a nice little lapel pin, and you get included in a lot of kind of the conversations that we have about how we are continuing our recruitment efforts to identify and to sell New Hampshire to libertarians out there in the world. So yeah, I appreciate everyone who chips in that way, and people who come out to enjoy our events.
And it's a random question, but is the porcupine the state animal or something?
No, the porcupine. I mean, porcupines are native to New Hampshire. It's not the state animal, but the Free State Project adopted the porcupine as its symbol because it's a libertarian animal. One, it's
Oh,
always open carrying, right? They've got all their quills out in the open, right?
yeah.
And you don't mess with them. But if you don't mess with them, they don't mess with you. They are peaceful creatures until you step on their toes. Um, and so I think kind of like how the founding generation like put the rattlesnake on the "Don't Tread on Me" flag. The porcupine occupies kind of I think a similar spirit. Don't mess with us, we won't mess with you. And actually, the Libertarian Party um, adopted the porcupine as its own symbol, um, copying the Free State Project. So we had it first. But yeah, so the porcupine has become a big symbol of both the Free State movement and libertarianism in general.
That's cool. I didn't know that. Okay. I think random question, but you just saw the Tim Pool. He did a little poll the other day. Do you run the Twitter account?
I do. I mean, I have a few people who help me with the FSP Twitter account, but yeah, a lot of it's coming from
You run
me.
okay. So and it's doing well. I mean, you got 104,000 followers on the Free State Twitter account. And Tim Pool, he's just the latest guy. He said, like, where should I move to? Ran
Yes.
a poll: Texas, Florida, Tennessee, New Hampshire. New Hampshire came in last of the four. I tend to
I,
think it's
I,
literally just because it's cold in New
I
Hampshire. But what do you think that's due to?
well, I think as of when I was looking at it, I think the poll's only been going for a few hours, and it's is it completed?
No, actually, no. Okay. Well, so 20 hours left, but there's already 78,000 votes.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I will say one of the reasons that New Hampshire is the place where Tim Pool should move, and libertarians or
Mhm.
liberty loving people, which I guess Tim Pool's not a libertarian, but I'd say he's liberty adjacent. He certainly hangs out in a lot of libertarian circles. Um, the reason they should move is because New Hampshire is a small state, and as a
Mm.
with a strong libertarian streak. And the more
Mm-hmm.
libertarians we get here in this small state, the more impact we can have in shifting it more libertarian and creating a true free state. I think that disadvantages us in a poll like that because, there's a lot more people in Texas, right? Of course, Texas is going to do better on a poll like that. There's more Texans
Okay,
who
yeah,
are going
that's
to
a good
see it
point. That's a very good
and
point.
vote for it, right? But of course, again, if you were to take 20,000 libertarians and drop them in Texas, that would be a drop in the ocean.
It's a drop
It's
in the
not going to have
bucket.
an impact
All
there.
right.
But you take 20,000 libertarians and you drop them in New Hampshire, suddenly you control the state legislature.
Yeah, that's true. I guess part of it's the jobs thing too, and like, like economic activity. There's no Tesla plant in New Hampshire, but I mean, there's lots of like, I don't know, stuff in like the medical industry, sciences. I don't know, a bit of
Yeah,
tech.
there are various opportunities. We certainly do get a lot of people who are, in the IT crowd who have the jobs where if you can work from anywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
You might as well work from New Hampshire. New Hampshire is ranked number
Right.
one for internet connectivity. So for those kinds of, if you've got your laptop and you can do your job, New Hampshire's great for that. We do have, we have manufacturing. We've got some firearm manufacturers here. A lot of people kind of land in some people land here and get kind of those. You can start with kind of those sorts of jobs. A lot of people do land in southern New Hampshire because they'll commute to jobs in Massachusetts. So there's different possibilities. There's different possibilities for people. We try to have resources to help people find a good situation if we can.
Fireworks.
Yeah, we do have fireworks. Yeah.
But seriously, I think for young entrepreneurs, like guys in their 20s, on paper, New Hampshire is the best because there is some capital gains tax, but there's no sales tax, right? But when you're young, you don't really have a lot of capital gains, right? Because you haven't built up a stock portfolio over years and decades, right?
Well, I
So
will
you'd
actually
actually
say,
benefit more from the sales tax than the capital gains.
New Hampshire actually just got rid of completely its interest and dividends tax.
Really?
Yeah, we used to have to put a little asterisk when we said there was no income tax in New
Right.
Hampshire.
Kind of like Tennessee.
Yeah. Now there is no income tax in New Hampshire. We don't. So I'm
Really?
fairly, yeah. I'm fairly certain that includes capital
Wow.
gains. You're still going to pay the federal taxes, of course. You can't escape that unless you go.
Right. So I'm a Texas resident, and so I don't even file a state tax return in Texas because there's nothing to like
Yeah.
file on, right?
Yeah.
So if I was concerned that in New Hampshire I'd be paying like capital gains on like my crypto or my stock trading and this kind of thing. But is that not a thing anymore?
That's my understanding.
Interesting. That would make it the best state for taxes by far because sales tax is pretty significant because Texas's sales tax rate is 7%, I believe, right?
Yeah. I
And
just
it adds up.
I just wanted to confirm, so I just Googled it. New Hampshire does not have a state capital gains tax, and we don't have and we don't tax interest or dividends either. So,
Really?
yeah, no taxes on income. The only like sales taxes we have is like meals and lodging. So if you're coming to visit, we might tax you a bit. But 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 yeah, and this is and in particular, kind of like eliminating the interest and dividends taxes, these taxes on investment income. This has been a big fight of free staters in the legislature in recent years. That has been a big fight between the free state led, the liberty led Republican coalition and
Wow.
the Democrats who've been fighting tooth and nail to keep these taxes in place.
Wow. Legends doing God's work.
It's happening piece by piece. I see a lot of other states where liberty's dying to death by 1,000 cuts, but in New Hampshire, there's so many different people working on so many different projects that it's the state that's dying to death by a million cuts.
That's awesome, man. So the asterisk is removed.
It is gone. We can take out our eraser and wipe it off. No income tax.
No income tax, no sales tax, no capital gains dividends tax. That's like the big three, kind of.
Yeah, and of course, like as you mentioned, like for entrepreneurs, one of the things that we have in spades in New Hampshire is libertarian human capital. We have got so many smart, talented, hungry to build things. Liberty people. I mean, that's the thing that's great. Like the people who come here are kind of, it's that pioneer spirit. You're coming to do something. You're coming to build something, not just to sit around and complain on the internet about people, which is oftentimes what we see, sometimes in liberty spheres online. So anyone who wants to come and bring their capital with them and invest in a business or an entrepreneurial activity, there are a lot of people who you could find for kind of collaborators and to work with here.
And Eric, here's the other thing. You're going to laugh, but okay. So you know how we're going to have full self-driving with Tesla soon, where like you literally don't even have to touch the steering wheel. You're just getting like chaperoned by the robot car.
That's what they say. We'll see.
That is going to be a big boon for New Hampshire because commuting to Boston from New Hampshire right now sucks. Like from Nashua, like whatever, it sucks. Like the hour plus drive, the traffic, it sucks. But if you don't even have to actually drive and you're just chilling, like kind of like dozing off, like texting, whatever, and you don't even have to actually drive it, that's like that like makes the difference to me. Right? Where it's like, shit, I'll be in New Hampshire, pay zero tax. And then like when I got to go to Boston, whatever, I'm not even driving. I just get like, you know what I mean? I just get, teleported by the robot car.
Well, and I think, in New Hampshire in recent years, New Hampshire, that's right. So in recent years, New Hampshire became the first state to also legalize flying cars. So maybe your car would not, your car would have to touch the ground before you went into Massachusetts.
It doesn't even need to fly. I'm just saying like on the road, but as long as I don't have to pay attention for an hour there, an hour back, you know what I mean? Or more. But if it's full self-driving and I'm just chilling in the car and I can do work and I have internet in the car, like it's fine. Commuting is a lot more tolerable when you don't actually have to, pay attention and use the brain muscles. So I think that'll actually be I'm kind of joking, but I think that'll actually be a boon for New Hampshire because it'll make commuting and going to Boston for those occasional things, maybe a doctor's appointments, whatever, like it'll make it a lot more tolerable.
Yeah, very well could be. It's a brave new world we're entering into.
Yeah. I like it. No, this conversation has really tipped the scale for me for New Hampshire being potentially a viable thing in the future. I don't know. Something about Florida is just like weird to me. It's too like lawless. You know what I mean? Texas is boring. It's too flat. I like the mountains. I like the waterfalls. I like the nature. New Hampshire's got the nature. So yeah, this is looking better and better.
Well, Vance, you have an open invitation. Anytime you want to come up and explore New Hampshire, let us know. We'd be happy to kind of help you find some great events to check out and some people to meet. Of course, the easiest time to visit is when we have one of our big events going on. Come out to Pork Fest or the New Hampshire Liberty Forum.
When is that? So
the New Hampshire Liberty Forum is taking place in late April. That's going to be April 24th through the 27th. People can go to our website, learn more at nhlibertyforum.com. And then the Porcupine Freedom Festival will be in mid-June, and that's at porkfest.com. And there are different experiences. Again, the Liberty Forum is more kind of academic and more kind of idea-based, whereas Pork Fest is more of an experiential experience, a pop-up free society for a week. we're working right now on getting both of them squared away. Tickets are on sale for both right now.
Love it. Why don't you take this time, Eric, as we get to wrapping up, to just keep sharing any additional message that you'd like to share with the audience, where to direct their attention, all that good stuff.
Well, I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure talking with you, Vance. I love hearing kind of your interest and curiosity in what we're doing up here. And to all of your audience who have not already been sold that they need to move to Latin America, if you want to move to the freest state in North America, or at least the certified most economic freedom in North America, please come check out New Hampshire. Learn more at fsp.org. Check out our events as we've already discussed. You can follow my weekly podcast called The Porcupine Report, which is on all of our social media platforms. You can follow me on Twitter at Senator Brakey. And of course, you can follow the Free State Project as well at Free State NH.
Sweet. Yeah, and there'll be a link in the description as well, definitely to the Twitter, because that's where most of our audience comes from. And Eric, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciated your time and learning more about this project. I've wanted to do this podcast for a while, so I'm glad we finally made it happen.
Yeah, pleasure's all mine. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. This has been another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Again, our guest today, Eric Brakey, New Hampshire Free State Project. And guys, audience, wherever you're listening to this, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, X, please be sure to like and subscribe. We put out 2 episodes a week with amazing guests like Eric, and you won't want to miss an episode. Ciao for now.